This 11 by 17 is of the immune system. Now, the immune system is going to be one of the more important systems we cover in all of AMP2. And that makes sense when you think about what are those things going to cause you to end up in a hospital bed. Immune system is going to be near the top of that list. So also, because it's such an important system, it's not a system we're going to trust to multiple choice. Basically, the way you'll be tested is you have to reproduce this entire figure. I know that seems like a lot, but there's two reasons here. One is the immune system is so important, but two, I need you to know that basically the immune system is a huge network of a variety of cells and a variety of mechanisms, all working together to make sure pathogens can't get inside of you. It's so complex that you need to understand all of the different parts in order to also see the complexity. So in order to see the forest from the trees, you got to understand all the trees. So basically, how you'll be tested is there'll be a list of things that I expect to see on your drawing, and really, I'll be completely honest, almost everything on this drawing needs to be on your drawing. And furthermore, things like epithelia, cilia, mucus are on my list, and then also a short description of each of those. So also for like second line of defense, something like inflammation is a big one because you need to have swelling, redness, heat, and pain because those are the hallmarks of inflammation. You also need to know the three mechanisms of how it fights. So it brings in materials for repair, stops the spread of pathogens, and brings in other immune fighters. So those are 7 things. That's worth 7 points on this rubric. I'll begin this review by going through the lines of defense. The first line of defense is going to be barriers, and these are things that are just designed to keep things out. It's best to keep the pathogen out in the first place. The second line of defense are nonspecific defenses. These are things that know what pathogens look like, but they can't necessarily differentiate the different types of pathogens. Specific immunity, or the third line of defense, actually fights each type of pathogen individually. So it's either fighting E. coli, and if it's fighting E. coli, there's nothing in that system fighting E. coli that's going to cross over and help fight some other pathogen like HIV. So let's start with the first line of defense. And we'll start with epithelia. Epithelia covers surfaces and cavities, so things that are external, technically external. So the digestive system is technically external, the respiratory system is external, and it's lined with epithelia. Epithelia have tight junctions, and the purpose of tight junctions is you can stack all these epithelia cells so close together, tie them together with something called desmosomes, so any bacteria that's on that external surface can't make it through into the circulatory system. So if you breathe in bacteria, it'll sit on the outer surface of this epithelia, but it can't make it between the cells into the basolateral membrane into the circulatory system. So tight junctions keep bacteria on the outside surface, prevent it from making it into the circulatory system. Cilia are tiny hairs that can beat, and they line the respiratory system, and they'll sweep bacteria out of the lungs up into the digestive system. Mucus will be on top of epithelia, and it's a sticky trap for pathogens, so it's near external surfaces. Basically, any bacteria that make it into the body are going to get stuck in this mucus and not be able to move further into the body. Hair protects us from cuts, so if you can prevent an opening from opening in the first place, that's going to be a huge advantage to keeping pathogens out. Also, hair will alert us to insects, so it'll alert us to things like insects carrying West Nile or ticks carrying Lyme's disease. Our 3 other barriers are gastric juice. There's hydrochloric acid in the stomach that will kill bacteria. There are antimicrobial proteins, which are proteins that put holes in bacteria. They're simply proteins that make tunnel-like structures that when they're inserted into bacterial coats will create a hole. Anytime you create a hole in anything, basically, especially a bacteria, it's going to destroy that bacteria. Symbiotic bacteria are bacteria that exist in your gut. They don't harm you at all, but if any bad bacteria come along, these good bacteria are going to kill those bad bacteria, not so much to help you, but just to protect their own resources and to protect their own environment. Next, we'll do the second line of defense. This is nonspecific immunity. The first element of the second line of defense are phagocytes. Phagocytes are macrophages and monocytes. Basically, they can be fixed so they can stay in just one organ system, like a microglia stays in the brain, a Kupffer cell stays in the liver. That free float should not be there. Or these macrophages can be free. They can float anywhere in the body. There's also what are called microphages. These are neutrophils and eosinophils that also will phagocytize different pathogens. How they fight? Simply engulf pathogens and debris. Next are natural killer cells. They monitor tissues for unusual or abnormal shaped cells. Why would a cell be abnormally shaped? One of the first examples could be cancer. In cancer, a cell is so busy reproducing that it hasn't really taken the time to reproduce itself exactly accurately, and so it's misshapen. Also, if a cell's been exposed to a toxin or maybe a pathogen has made it very, very sick, it's going to be abnormally shaped and thus attract the attention of a natural killer cell. How do NK cells fight? First of all, they rotate their protein machinery towards the target cell. So it's going to rotate its ER and Golgi towards the target cell. The reason is it wants to shoot protein at the target cell, and that protein is called perforin. Perforin, just like the name suggests, will perforate the plasma membrane of the target cell and cause cell lysis. Interferon is basically a virus warning system. These are small proteins released from cells that have been infected by virus, and it's signaling to other cells to put up your defenses. Most cells, or all cells, can basically put up defenses to virus, but it takes too much energy to do this all the time. But if they get the signal that virus is around, they'll put up defenses that'll prevent the virus from getting into them. Our next one is complement. Really important one because it also ties in with specific immunity. But basically, complement does three things. It puts holes in bacteria. Remember, it has that C3 protein that sits down first, and then other C proteins will assemble next to the C3 and create a hole in the target cell. Complement can also opsonization, which basically is to flag a cell for phagocytes to come in and engulf it. Complement can also stimulate inflammation. We'll talk about inflammation next. What turns it on in the first place? So what stimulates complement in the first place? One of the main things that can turn it on are antibodies. So once an antibody finds a target, it will bind onto that target, and then it will call in complement to help it destroy that target. Complement can also find pathogens on its own, so it can recognize the bacterial coat of certain bacteria, and it will also sit down and create that hole. Inflammation, the hallmarks are swelling, redness, heat, and pain. How does it fight? So if you have a cut on the back of your hand, inflammation is basically fluid moving towards that cut. Three things are going to happen as fluid moves towards that cut. First of all, you're going to bring in materials for repair, like oxygen, platelets, amino acids, things like that. You're also going to stop the spread of pathogens. So if fluid is moving towards that cut, it's going to make it harder for pathogens to spread away from that cut too, and therefore it's going to make it harder for those pathogens to spread. Also, as fluid moves in, it's going to bring in other immune fighters, so it's going to bring in other white blood cells, complement, things like that. Fever, chemicals, or pyrogens from antigen-antibody complexes, or from bacteria or toxins will signal the hypothalamus to raise body temperature. What this does is it has two effects. First of all, it'll increase metabolism, so it speeds everything in the body up, which is also going to speed up healing. The other thing that fever does is it tells the liver to take up iron and zinc, also the spleen. If you take up iron and zinc are necessary for bacteria to grow, and if you take it up and you hoard it, you take it away from this bacteria, it's going to make it harder for that bacteria to grow. It's going to slow down their growth. So fever also causes the liver and the spleen to hoard iron and zinc, which is going to slow down the growth of bacteria.